While surveying, the attention of my husband was drawn toward a very bright-looking boy in Indian costume, who went hopping along by the side of the assistant that carried the chain. He inquired who the lad was, and, to his surprise, learned that he was the brother of the old family servants Victoire, Genevieve, and Baptiste. Tomah was in blanket and leggings, and had always lived in a wigwam. My husband inquired if he would like to go to Fort Winnebago with him, and learn to be a white boy. The idea pleased him much, and his mother having given her sanction to the arrangement, they set forth on their return journey.
My name is Mark Peterson.
I'm Frank Peterson, Mark's brother.
My third great grandmother was Genevieve Mirandeau, and she was the sister of Tomah from the book Wau-Bun.
The legend which endured in this family through the generations was related to Tomah and Genevieve's father, Jean-Baptiste Mirandeau, who lived at Milwaukee with his Odawa wife, Wishtuukwa.
My aunt insisted that our great-grandparents were one of the first founders of Milwaukee, and most of the history books had put Solomon Juneau as the first person to live in Milwaukee. So
Aunt Jeanette, who was the one who was very vocal, about not only that there was some Indian blood in our family, and but also that scoundrel Solomon Juneau took away our lands that we that we had rightfully belonged to us.
Genevieve's husband's name, her maiden or her married name was Belanger, and Aunt Jeanette always said, well, it was on the Belanger side is where this came from. That's what she told me. And after researching it was past that.
Right.
So in the family history, the
yeah.
Mirandeaus weren't really any part of the family history. It was the Belanger, which they didn't even live in Milwaukee. So when there was research first started looking into it, none of it made sense at first. But then when I realized her maiden name was Mirandeau and found out that Jean-Baptiste lived here, that's when it made the connection.
He was blacksmith to the Indians in Milwaukee, and first permanent white settler in 1795, and he lived till about in 1819 or 1818. I think I've seen different dates.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was blacksmith to the Indians as well as did some trading, and he was promised 1,000 acres of land between Milwaukee, from the Milwaukee River to the lakefront, Lake Michigan, and up to North Point, so about 1,000 acres, which became the land that Solomon Juneau claimed. So that was the legend for our family, is that scoundrel, the Solomon Juneau, took the family's legacy and claimed the land for himself. And
to me, Solomon Juneau really had nothing, very, very minimal contact with Jean-Baptiste Mirandeau, and it was almost more in passing that they met each other.
Right, I think he came about when
Jean-Baptiste
was
he
at the end of his
basically
life.
they were only alive together for about a year at the most. So he doesn't really have anything. He didn't have anything against our family. It's just because he ended up being such a big person in Milwaukee. That's where the assumption, but more or less came that he died before the treaties were finalized. So
right, but promised by the Indians, but it didn't actually happen.
And then his wife, who was the Indian, she ended up going back with the natives because she didn't have any place else to go.
I can imagine at the time an Indian woman with 10 children would probably not have any legal standing in the country, and so I can see why she would have gone back to. And I think that may have been Potawatomi. I don't think her own tribe was local.
Right. It said she ended up back in Muskego. So obviously her family or people she knew or something lived in Muskego, because that's where she died, is in Muskego. Right. But some of the children too went down by the Kinzies at Fort Dearborn,
Right.
Two of the Genevieve being one of them. Her and her sister Victor, and I think one of the sons. They were the servants for the Kinzies for years. There was also a story of where John Kinzie, the senior, there was supposedly some sort of a battle or gunfight, and Victoria was supposedly one that she heard it, or basically sort of witnessed it, because it was at near darkness, and the two of them were fighting, and John Kinzie got up, but the other guy didn't, and he ran back, and then the story is that he went with John Baptiste Mirandeau back to Milwaukee for several months, to 6 months or something, until they knew that nothing was going to come of it, and then he moved back to Fort Dearborn after that.
Genevieve, after working within the Kinzie's Chicago household, found employment at Mackinac Island, where her parents had been married. She worked within the household of prominent entrepreneur Madame Magdalene Leframbois, who was of the same Odawa heritage as her own mother, Wishtuuqua.
Genevieve, she ended up in Mackinac because that's where her daughter was born, who was our second great grandmother. Then they ended up moving to Green Bay, or near Green Bay, to Door County, and that's where her daughter met our great grandfather, who was a Peterson, and that's where her name comes from. So, okay. So it goes back and forth between Milwaukee and all the way up to Michigan, and then back down to Door County. And our great grandfather, he was born in Door County, and then he moved up to Michigan. He moved back up to Michigan, to Cornell, Michigan, and that's where our grandfather was born. Was in Cornell in 1899 he was born.
Yeah, Hubert.
Yeah,
right.
And then in the 1920s, our grandfather, he moved back to Milwaukee then, and then that's how he lived the rest of his life in Milwaukee.
Grandma always called Hubert Hub this and Hub that, and that was great. Hub and Esther, our grandparents, and the very large, good Catholic families. When cousins got together, it was a big deal. It was a lot of kids, and yes. The one recollection I have of Hubert is in 35th Street. We'd be there, and he would pull out a true 3-pound bag of salted in the shell peanuts and just rip them open and throw them on the table, and all the kids were gathered around, and we were all just having a gay old time, and shells went on the floor just peeling, and shells Grandpa loved to entertain. He was also a great fisherman. Fished the government pier is what it was called at the time, or and in Milwaukee, or he would even go up to Port Washington and fish off the pier. And he had either cane poles. He would take literally a bundle of cane poles, and would have a minnow bucket on one end with his bait, and the other end had an empty 5-gallon pail. That was to put the catch in. Walk out, and getting out to Port Washington Pier. I went once when I was a youngster before it was developed, and that pier literally had about an 18-inch beam, and you walked on that beam till you got out to the concrete. So you had to walk a couple 100 feet on that. Later, then they added a railing on one side, so you had a cable to hold on to. And he would fish and come home with a 5-gallon pail full of perch, and take that pail and he would dump it in the kitchen sink, a big old-fashioned kitchen sink with the porcelain, and just fill it. And then Grandma's job was to sit and clean all those fish. And it was the old-fashioned way of, you actually scaled the fish so scales would fly, and then fillet the fish. It's like it was something else. You're right. Yeah. It was something else.
While Genevieve and her descendants stayed close to their Great Lakes roots, some of her siblings, likely including Tomah, had a very different experience.
Yeah. My assumption is he ended up going south with the a couple other family members down towards Kansas, basically to the Indian reservation.
Oh, because of the migration going
Right.
on and the Indians being
So-
forced
They were forced
further west.
Yeah, they were forced down into Kansas to live on the reservation. So, because there was a couple that did do very well that lived on the reservation. So they lived down there for a long time. I think it was probably more of a personal choice, but that's where they felt more comfortable with, and they knew, or it was probably more because their husbands were white, and so they were more accepted, as they weren't being treated as Indians as much. And Genevieve and Victor both had lived with the Kinzies for years, so maybe they felt more comfortable being in the white society type situation. Maybe that's where they felt more comfortable too. Because the story was brought down through generations, way beyond her. I think that shows that she still had a strong sense of being Indian, but she was more. I think her husband influenced her enough to not stay with the Indians. But if she had no or interest in being Indian, the stories never would have got passed down.
Mark reconnected his ancestors' family with Portage's past through Juliette Kinzie's writings.
Right. I think it's cool too to have a distant tie to the Indian Agency House. That Tomah was there.
Right. I bought the book because I was interested in the history of the Indian Agency House, and after having read part of it, I didn't even know that our ancestors or Genevieve had lived with the Kinzies, but in the book it mentioned that. Seeing that would really kind of tie things together too, somewhat.
Yeah. And again, my idea after the exposure to the Indian Agency House, reading the book, it's like there's so much interconnectedness, and and then all the descriptions of travel that Julie Kinzie did, it's like, that to me was mind-boggling, that the world is not so large, it's really pretty small or connected, and all of the communities that were just in their infancy